first. I'm just going to wait for my mum to come back in, actually. And then we'll do that. Okay, so we're going to get started. Actually, Pam is going to read Sibling Strangers first, so you can all hear the poem. I just want to say that, you know, it was really interesting. I was thinking of your poem when we were watching the film, because there are some points in there that I think you cover, so I think we'll go from there. But once you've read your poem, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we'll do a couple of the questions that we discussed. And it'd be great to get any questions from yourselves as well. So if anyone's got anything they want to ask, you know, do go for it. Okay, so when you're ready, I don't know if you want to stand or...
I don't know.
Yeah? You do what you're comfortable with. Yeah, if you're comfy, that's cool.
Okay, hi everyone.
Yeah, you might have to hold it a bit closer.
I'm Pam Williams, and I'm very honoured to be asked to be here this evening to read my poem, Sibling Strangers, which is about my first remembered meeting of one of my sisters. So, skinny legs, stretching from beneath a miniskirt, pressed hair, upswept, no ribbons or bows, skin fair like mummy's, not dark like mine, a haughty look, uninviting, in response to my shy child smile. Birthed by the same mother, grown in different worlds. I was the English one, the last in line, and she, a teenager, just arrived in this cold land. We were sibling strangers, separated by time. Our stairs colliding across an 8-year divide. We were names heard, faces and photographs seen. We knew stories of each other, but we had no mutual history. All we'd learned, written in letters, told by word of mouth. What was missing, what we didn't have, was memories, laughed or cried or hugged. We had no knowledge of our likes or dislikes, our braveries or fears, no nicknames to tease with, no pain or happiness along the way shared. Nothing but our blood to bridge the distance, to bring us near. So there I stood, a round-cheeked, knock-kneed, cane-headed little girl, waiting for our foreignness to ebb, to become the sisters we were born.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pam. So during the COVID lockdown, which was 2020, it's all getting a bit blurry now. I had applied for some funding from the Windrush Fund to run some screenings and some events, and we all know what happened. We went into lockdown and everything went online. So I ran a poetry competition instead, and Pam's was Sibling Strangers was the winning entry. So that's how we connected. It took us another 2 years to meet in person. In fact, we met 2 weeks ago in London ahead of this event, but we stayed in touch, which has been fantastic. So I feel really blessed to know you. So it just felt like a really good fit when screening this film by Nadine White, that actually to highlight Sibling Strangers again and to invite you to Reading. So I was really pleased that you could make it. So yeah, a couple of questions to ask you. So tell us about Sibling Strangers, because I put out the word to do this poetry competition and for people to share their experiences of the Caribbean. So tell us what made you want to refer and do a poem about your relationship with your sister, and you can tell us a bit about your sister as well.
Okay, so the competition, as you said, was about experiences of the Caribbean, and I didn't have that experience, so I was just trying to find a way of linking it. And I can remember being 7 and meeting my sister for the first time, and also my brother, and it didn't seem strange then because that was just what it was, and it was my life that happened. But looking back, it is a strange thing to suddenly, at the age of 7, to meet your siblings for the first time. And my 2 elder sisters lived in Grenada, and they never came over. And I met them when I was 9, and they were both mothers. So the dynamics between the family is really odd, because I am the English one. My mum was pregnant when she came over, so they all knew each other, but they didn't know me. So it was never an issue as a problem, but I always felt a bit like, well, I don't know Grenada, I don't know all the things they know, I haven't got all those memories. So, yes, it was a bit weird. And so I kind of just wanted to go from that point of view. And then I was thinking, well, what must it have felt like for them coming here and then meeting me for the first time, because suddenly they've got this sister. And I was actually writing my novel at the time, and that kind of focuses on that experience of a son coming back to be reunited with his mother after 7 years. So it's kind of inspired by my family, but focusing on the trauma of being left behind, and as the film shows, being uprooted, arriving, finding you've got a new family, trying to fit back in, and depending on what your personality is like, that might not have been so easy. And for one of my brothers, it wasn't. He actually did have a psychotic breakdown eventually. And I think it's because he just couldn't express, he couldn't articulate all the feelings. You know, he was 7 or 8 when my mum left, and 15 when he saw her again. And I remember my sister saying, he said to her, "Who is that woman?" when he met my mum again. Yeah. So.
And that was certainly covered in the film.
Yeah.
And you're being so open and kind about sharing your experience. You know, it's it just I think it's something that's been ignored for a long time. And I think our parents, I'm generalising, but they thought they did the best they could, and they thought, well, they're kids, they'll adapt. That's what people say about kids all the time, don't they?
They did what they had to do, and we don't talk about those things. It just happens. You accept it, and you move on. As they said in the film, you just carry on going, and you don't stop and think about it because you had to do it. And that's being strong, that's being resilient, that's making the most of your life.
I know my mum's here tonight, and it's one of those situations where I think her and my dad looked at our older sister going back to be with our grandparents whilst they were, young and trying to make a way. And I'm so grateful actually they didn't. She's not here tonight, but our older sister Colleen is beloved, and I can't imagine what my relationship would have been like with her as she had grown up in Barbados and then came back to this country. After 15 years, the first time we would have met, I probably would have been around 5 or 6, it just would have been so bizarre. So, and how with you and your sister, were you able then to, tell us a bit more about your sister?
So I don't remember a lot about being that age, and I think because she was a teenager and I was still very young, our lives were very, very separate. And as we grew up, I remember her going to work, and then she was partying, and she had all her friends, and it was like, one day I'm going to be able to do all that too. But we didn't really start to get really, really close until, well, I guess 20s. I was in my 20s by then. And then when she became a mother, I was auntie, and that brought us even closer. And then I became a mother, and I think our relationship really, really tightened once we both became mothers. And I guess maybe we understood more of life.
And did you ever talk about, what it was like, for growing up on 2 sides of the Atlantic?
No.
You never really talked about it?
We never ever had a conversation about it.
Right.
We just got on with it. It's like, we're here now, we're brothers and sisters, we've got school, work or whatever, and we'd go out and we shared a bedroom, she'd play music and we'd dance, and I kind of lived her life just watching her enjoy it, and I just accepted everything. Maybe because I was, maybe because I am the youngest, and it's you don't get really that much input. Everything just happens around you.
Yeah.
So I think maybe I just kind of like, okay, it wasn't a problem. She wasn't horrible to me. I wasn't horrible to her.
Yeah.
So it was fine. We didn't fight. We never ever had an argument. If we disagreed, it was like, okay, fine. You keep your opinion, I'll keep mine. It's fine.
Oh, that's really, really lovely, and it's really important that you were able to find that way through, because as we saw in the film, I'm sure there was probably a lot more footage that the Dean could have shared in that film, people sharing their experiences. So you started to mention, actually no, I just want to ask about your parents' decision to come to the UK. Have you ever really reflected on that and thought about that, and if you think they made a good decision? Because I sometimes had that thought about sliding doors. What if my parents at 17 and 21 had said, actually no, we're going to stay in Barbados, I'm one of 6, you know, how that life would have been. Have you ever reflected on that?
Not really. Maybe more so now that I started writing the book,
Right.
but never before, because they did what they had to do. And my mum always talked about struggling and everything being really hard, not being able to eat, having to feed the kids and go without, and it was her only chance, so she had to take it.
Right.
So it just, I never questioned it because I felt she had to do what she had to do, and I trusted her to do the right thing for everyone.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, it'd be great to hear about your book. After Pam shares that with us, if anyone's got any questions, I'd love to throw to the audience if that's okay. Yeah, so tell me about how this experience then has inspired the book that you've got coming out next year.
Okay, so I started writing like about 30 odd years ago, kept stopping and starting, and I wanted it to be about my mum and tell her stories of the journey here and having to leave the kids behind. And then I'd get to bits which was really hard to write, and I probably didn't know enough really to write it without speaking to her. And it was the sort of thing that you spoke about. She didn't, unless she started talking about something or telling me a little story, I didn't feel like I just started delving into her past and just trying to rake things up and force her to tell me stuff. So it was very gradual. But then she passed away, and then I put the book aside again for a while. And then when I dug it back up again, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. But the only way to do it is to really just fictionalise everything, so that I could, anything that was a bit tricky or felt too hard to deal with, I would just wrap it up in another character and add things to it or take things away, and it wouldn't matter because, that person wasn't real. But again, on and off, on and off. And then, after Maya Angelou died, that was kind of like a real catalyst. I went to an event at South Bank, and they talked about her life, and they read pieces of her work, and they showed film clips, and I came out feeling like, really, like literally floating on air, thinking, right, she said, dare to try, I'm going to do it, I'm going to dare to try, I'm going to get my book published, I've been thinking about it for long enough, I'm putting it off for long enough, I'm just going to do it. So I just joined a writing group, and started doing lots of workshops, just attending lots of workshops, trying to really hone my craft and trying to find out about the industry, because I had no idea. How do you get a book published? Once you've written it, what do you do then? And then I got a place on the London Writers Award. And that's a sort of development program, and you get to meet editors and publishers and agents, and they tell you about the industry. They talk about your writing, how to write characters and dialogue. And there was just lots and lots of input, and we had a feedback group so we could share our work and get criticism and find out what was working, what wasn't. That was really, really useful.
Right.
It's really good to know, you do this all the time, or you keep saying using that word, or that doesn't sound plausible. So getting the criticism from other writers and saying, this could be better if you did this. And at the end of it, they shared 500 words from each of our stories, sent it out again to agents and editors, and I was approached by 2 agents, and one of them took me on.
Fantastic.
Yes. So I found somebody who loved the book enough to think there's a readership for it. Spent probably another year fine-tuning it and sending it back and forth, and now it's going to be published in March. And
Congratulations.
It's called A Trace of Sun. Look out for it.
That's great, thank you. Has anyone got any questions from the audience? You got one up there. I'll give you that mic. Take the mic up. You might have to hold it a bit closer. Thank you, Angelica.
Thank you for...
Yeah.
Is this on?
Yeah, it's on, yeah.
Thank you for sharing this really important film about an aspect of Windrush that is unknown to many people, but it's certainly very much known, to the many people and others who we saw in the film. But it's not simply an aspect of Windrush. It was made very clear during the film that this phenomenon has created enormous costs. Pam's poem, Sibling Strangers, is an example, of a cost, the separation, of families that we've seen tonight. Now, I wanted to just say two things and then put a chat and then ask a question, perhaps of yourselves and the audience. One aspect of the film which I find very interesting is the considerable and understandable references to number of references to grandparents, particularly grandmothers, in this process. Now, I can't speak for Caribbean societies, but I have a little bit of knowledge and understanding of the role of grandparents in African societies, and I'd like to share just a few observations. The relationship between grandparents, particularly grandmothers, and their grandchildren is very different to the relationship between parents and child.
Yeah.
I think it possibly is in a lot of families within Britain as well. It's a very different relationship, which does have implications, can have significant implications for socialisation, and so forth. So I think that's an interesting issue to explore further. But I think also related to this is that we have still today, certainly in many African societies, but Irene reminded me a moment ago, in many parts of the world, we have lots and lots of families that are undergoing the barrel children phenomenon today as we speak. We've got the Filipinos, who are leaving children behind in order to come and work in Britain today. We have people from East and West and Southern Africa doing exactly the same, and many other parts of the world. And so many of those children are again left with usually grandmothers. And these days, for a whole variety of reasons, including poverty, it can place great strain on the grandmothers, many of whom are aging, sometimes in poor health, and so it's not and my question would be, I think it'd be really interesting to know sort of what sort of impacts this did have, besides the loving impacts and so forth. But what sort of other impacts did it have on the grandparents?
Thank you.
And just one challenge, and this is going to be a little bit provocative, but I think this is such an important issue, and it's a contemporary issue, and it's part of history. And my challenge, my question is, where is this information? Is it really getting out to the younger people? And are they aware of this? And some of the scars, that this has had on it still has today on their parents.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me all okay. I mean, I'd love you to come in shortly. I think it's something that it's now having met Nadine White, the director, I think it's kind of our generations now that are having these conversations with our parents and our grandparents. And it's been known about for a long time, but when I was talking to somebody else about it who's not from the Caribbean or even African communities, and they were like, I'd never really heard of that. And in fact, I was talking to somebody in the foyer from the white British community, and he said, I can't even begin to imagine how painful that must be. But I think because it was so painful, in my opinion, so many people didn't want to talk about it. So that's one of the reasons when I heard about this film and then saw it, I was really keen to get it shown. I took part in some interviews with the Caribbean elders in Reading, and those interviews are available via Reading Museum. And it was the Windrush and their descendants, so not only those from the Windrush community, but their descendants talking about their experiences as well. And I personally think the more it's talked about, the more the healing can begin. We can't change when young Caribbeans came to this country and helped to build it, but what we can do is share those stories and help to try and recognise that. Do you want to add anything to that?
I would say, because that generation didn't talk about those things, it's taken us a while to actually acknowledge them. And it is down to us now to put things out in the open, and that is why there's a film, and there's books, and there's going to be many more stories. And there are already groups meeting, and I know someone who's writing a dissertation about it. So it will come out more and be talked about more, but it has to start from somewhere. our grandparents wouldn't have talked about it, our parents didn't really talk about it, so it's our turn, if we take over the mantle, we have to let the world know and talk to each other, because every time you talk to someone, they're like, yeah, that happened in my family,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, so I'm not the only one.
Mm.
But you know, we're so used to keeping things to ourselves, you know, what goes on behind closed doors, you keep it in the family,
Yeah.
and we need to talk.
Yeah, definitely, I'd agree with that. Has anybody else got a question for Pam, or any points they want to raise about the film? You're very welcome to do so.
I think it'd be interesting to,
Do you want the mic, Andrea?
I think it'd be interesting to delve into the psychological effect
Yeah.
of being left behind, and also the cycle, you know, and then coming and finding a new family. For example, some people came and they were single and left children behind, then came and had a new family. So in your situation, your mother was pregnant when she came, but there's others that obviously they come and then they find their parent has already got children, has got a new family, and it's taken them a while for them to. It was economics, because they had to find money in order to send for their children, so they came to build a way. But also, a lot of parents were sending money back, thinking that money was going to help with their children, and it wasn't. And last year I went to the Henley Literary Festival and I met Baroness Floella Benjamin, who was speaking about that situation. If you read her autobiography, where she speaks about the money that was being sent back was not being used to care for her. And they were being terribly mistreated by a family member.
Yeah.
And also that happened to people coming over here. They were told, come over, you know, we'll take care of you, look after you, and da-da-da. And when they come here, they're not being treated well either by relatives. So there's a whole psychology in there, I think. But going back to your book, which I'm really very much looking forward to reading, I went to a lecture earlier this year with Kit DeWall, who gave a talk over at Reading University, which was a real shame because there wasn't a lot of people from the community that came down to that. And she's very much about Black literature, and she has a fund which helps young writers and really tries to help young Black writers, not just young Black writers, because she only became a writer in her 50s. She always felt that she had a book inside her, and went from teaching into writing this book. So there is funding out there. If you feel that you have a book inside you, I feel that it's for, you know, to reach out to, you know, to look to see if there can be kind of some way you can be nurtured in that way to write that book inside you. But yeah.
Thank you, Andrea. Yes,
Yeah.
I think you
So
mentioned
yeah,
great funds.
there are sort of development programs. So in London, Spread the Word, and they do lots of workshops and competitions and talks and all sorts of courses. A lot of them are free, and they're for underrepresented people, so Black or working class. So there are a lot more opportunities now than there were. So definitely keep an eye out. Just research everything.
I was just going to add to the comment the gentleman made about how we're connecting the younger generations. One of the reasons I called the events that I've run since Thursday the 12th this week, I called it Black History, Black Future, because I think it's really important that it's all connected up. You connect up the past with the present and the future. So that was the reasoning behind. We showed a short film called Homegrown by a great filmmaker called Corinne Walker, who's based in Bristol. So I urge you to Google her. She does theatre work as well. And Homegrown was about modern slavery of Caribbeans coming to work in the UK to pick fruits, Caribbeans and Africans, but it also relates to other groups as well. But it has a direct line back to slavery all those years ago, because the same kind of practices and how people are being treated. But again, by showing a film like that to a more wider range of people in terms of age was really important. I showed Rye Lane last night. So certainly anything I try and do, I think it's really important not just to talk about the history, but to get it to inform the present. and to also inform the future, because we can only move forward if we take some of that information, as you've helpfully shared there, Andrea, about finding those fundings, and you have as well. Has anybody else got a question? Otherwise,
back to that, there was, I don't know if anybody saw the documentary, was it last week, the week before, called White Nanny?
no, I haven't seen it yet.
So again, it's kind of like the reverse of what the Caribbean experience was, where a lot of Nigerian families, they came to work to get their doctorates or study or work hard, and they put their children into foster care.
Yes, yes.
And it was privately done, so it was like an authorised fostering system. So, and the trauma that caused a lot amongst a lot of families, because one child was saying that her mother came and kidnapped her, literally, and took her back to Nigeria, and she only knew her foster parents as her parents. She was with them from 1 year old up until 7.
Wow.
So it's like a reverse trauma.
Yeah.
So there's a lot in common there. So I would really highly recommend watching that documentary as well.
Yes, I have.
It's very good.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I haven't seen it yet. And I want to add, actually, Baroness Floella Benjamin did a great Desert Island Disc where she talks about the mistreatment by some relatives when her parents were sending money back to the Caribbean. So I'm a bit of a Radio 4 nerd. I blame my husband, he's got me into listening to Radio 4. But actually, it's really good, because she talks about it it obviously causes pain, but she also talks about how she's been able to transcend it and where her life is now, and the fact that she's been able to, sort of, it's still in her sort of story, but it's not the full picture. But yeah, that's a great recommendation film-wise. So I'm going to sort of wrap things up if no one's got any more questions. But what I will say, so Pam, tell us where we can find your book, when it's coming out. But sorry, have you got one there? I'm so sorry, I didn't see.
Oh, hello. Yeah, great film. Thank you for showing it today. I suppose there's a lot talked about in the film about loss and about separation. Obviously, I've got a question for you. How did you feel, obviously, meeting your sister for the first time? You spoke about it like a little bit, but how did that relationship develop? Obviously, you've been separated for a while. How did it start? How did it develop?
It was a long time ago now. I didn't think about it. I think we just sort of just fell into sync, and because she was older, I had to do as I was told. So, I just did as I was told. She did lots of the housework and cooking, and I probably didn't do as much as I should have done, so she might have felt a bit annoyed with me about that. But our relationship, and so I think we always got on. She was someone you could go to for advice and help. It took me a long time to realise that, because obviously by the time I was a teenager, she was much older, and I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing, I'm grown up, I can do what I want, and I don't need you to help me, which I probably did. But I said that once we got past that bit and I did grow up, then we really connected. But you don't really analyse your relationships, do you? You just live them. And my sister actually died in 2021, a year after I wrote that poem. So, at which point, yes, then I started thinking about our lives together and what we'd done, and the fact that she was just always there, and she had a really dry sense of humour, quite a wicked sense of humour. Couldn't always tell when she was, joking or not, and it kept you on your toes. But yeah, you don't analyse relationships, you just live them, and maybe we should every now and again stop and think, wow, my brother, my sister, my cousin, whoever it is, what do they mean to me? What are they in my life? And start thinking about it now, because I could only tell her after she'd gone. So, yeah.
Thank you, Pam. So I was wondering if you'd mentioned that she's no longer with us, but I know you and your family gave her a really great send-off, which was lovely. That's fantastic. And I'm sorry, Adrian, I didn't see that. It's a little bit gloomy in here. Oh, you got one more? Yeah? Okay, if you don't mind. Angelica. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much for showing that film. It was an experience that I can very much relate to, because I've got, I'm one of 9, and 3 were left in the Caribbean, 3 came over here, and I was one of 3 that was born here, so I know that whole line of experience. One of the things what I wanted to ask to you perhaps directly is, do you think the sense of estranged and sort of disconnect that we have as a community, and the high percentage of mental illness that is attributed to the Black and the Caribbean community, could be in part a lot to do with this, the separation that was experienced?
Is that to Pam or just
To yourself?
I definitely think there needs to be a lot more conversation. I think sometimes we can end up not only talking about the things that have been tough, but also we don't always talk enough about where we're doing really fabulous things and coming together. But I do think there's something in that. I think I'm in my 40s still, just. And I think it's, as I've grown older, I've felt more empowered personally to sort of say to my family, I'm finding that difficult, or I'm finding that hard. And I think as a Black woman, I think I'm generalising, but I think women, we approach things a bit differently. And I think there definitely is then that Black male perspective of trying to share that as well. I think the way we live has changed. So I remember on Saturday mornings, we used to go, my mum will smile at this, we used to go to one of my sister's godmother's house, Mother Thornhill, and we used to go, and she used to make like soup, and we would go there with my dad and visit, and doing all those things on a Saturday, and then we'd be at church on Sunday, and then one of my sister's godfathers here tonight as well. So, we'd see their family. But I think because of the world has sped up, our older generations, they're not out and about as much. When I come into Reading now, I don't see as many Caribbeans that I know. So I think all of those things, the way we live, we're not necessarily all in the town centres anymore. Our children might have grown up and moved away. I lived away from Reading for a while and moved back a couple of years ago. I think it's changed the way we live. As a filmmaker and a film event curator, I'm always really keen to show a really wide range of stories, but show things from our community as well. Because it's never been more important for our children and grandchildren to know the stories of where they come from. And that film that Nadine's made, I think it's really important. We should celebrate our wins and our joys, but we should also reflect on the things that have caused us great pain and trauma and own those stories, and for us to tell them rather than anybody else telling them. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely, it does make sense. But I think one of the challenges that you're going to have is that I remember, you were the child that was seen and not heard, and when there were adults talking, the children weren't necessarily allowed to be part of that conversation.
Yeah.
And because our parents had so many different things to deal with,
Yeah.
we talk about the racism, we talk about the psychological struggles.
Yeah.
The chap that was passed the test for the train driver but wasn't allowed to be a train driver. We can all probably relate to that story.
Yeah.
Even in the modern world, even today.
Mm.
And it's to this gentleman's point, about the African experience and people being separated. It's something that we're well aware of, but it's great that you were able to show that film, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I think whatever we can do in our community is diverse and wide, and there's so much going on. I was saying to somebody earlier, there's so many events happening throughout the year, let alone this month, these next 6 weeks. But I think it's really important that we're all trying to signpost each other. So I've been signposting other people's stuff. I'm hoping to book and go to some stuff, and wherever we're doing stuff as much as we can, and not only amongst ourselves, but within our communities and within our allies as well, because I know there are tough times. I'm not going to sit here like Pollyanna and say that it's not hard. Getting all of this to work over the last few days, I'm quite ready for a bit of a nap tomorrow, if I'm honest. We're out tomorrow. I know I'm going to want my pyjamas on at 7 and to chill. But what keeps me going is that when people come out and they want to engage in it, when I hear people talking about somebody actually got in touch with me and said, "Are you doing any screenings? Do you think you can get hold of that film?" And I was like, "I'm already on it. I'm trying to get it." So I think the more we can try and do it, but I totally agree with connecting it up with our younger generations. My nieces and nephews couldn't make it tonight, but I'm always trying to bend their ear about films and what they're reading and what they're seeing, because it's really important to inform, to inform their future, that they know where they're coming from, they know about the struggles, but they also then take that one step further. And I hope many of you can identify with that they're the ones that are going to carry on the legacy. It's really important. So do you want to share any more about your book and where we can find it when it's coming out? Unless anyone's got anything else to ask. Well, I'm meant to be interviewing you, not me talking all night, so...
So I don't know yet where it will be distributed, so it will come out in March. I have an Instagram page which is Pam Williams Author, and all the information will go on there as it arrives. So I'm just waiting. I don't even know what the next step is. The proofs are going out. I think people are reviewing it. So it's all very new and mysterious and exciting. So yeah, as soon as I know more, I'll share it.
I think what's always also been great is there's more talk about authors from the Black and African communities. It's like lots of publishers have finally woken up. And also filmmakers as well, so that's really changing. So can I just get a round of applause for the wonderful Pam? Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. You don't know how much this means, actually. It's not been the easiest couple of months for me and my family, as we had a family loss. So thank you all so much. This means a great deal. I started working on it all in the summer, and it's been great to see it come to life. There is Laura the photographer still around, so as you're leaving, I'm hoping she's going to get some photos of people sort of leaving, and if you're hanging around for a drink, I'll be here for a little bit longer. You can follow throughaDifferentLens.co.uk, so that's the website. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I would really appreciate, if any of you are quite tech savvy, there's a QR code on the door. It should take you to a survey, a BFI survey. I don't see the results directly, but it just helps with any little pockets of funding that I can secure to run film nights like this. There's going to be more events coming up, so I'll publicise those as soon as possible. But great, thank you for coming out. Get home safely, and I really appreciate the support. Thank you so much. Good night.